Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch is brought to you by Nedbank.
The time is 2 p.m. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to another edition of Nedbank Business Watch, the weekly edition, the weekly broadcast of the show right here on Eswatini TV. My name is Nosile Sitole alongside Sifiso Ngumalo. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Good, how are you?
Doing fantastic. How about you?
Great, can't complain.
I'm doing all right. Your lands to the latest business developments in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Thank you for choosing us.
On the program today, Eswatini is taking a significant step towards financial inclusion and, of course, economic empowerment with plans to establish a cooperative bank, a move aimed at strengthening access to affordable financial services for cooperatives, small businesses and ordinary Eswatini. Now, this initiative seeks to build a strong member-owned financial institution that will promote savings, investment and sustainable economic growth. Of course, as the country lays the groundwork for this ambitious project, a high-level conference is underway. More in our business brief this afternoon.
And of course, we do want to unpack the big takeaways from Eswatini's recent regional economic meetings and what they mean for jobs, trade and growth across Southern Africa. Joining us will be Eunice G. Kamwendo, the Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa. Clear analysis, straight answers, and the road ahead for business. So stay with us for that interview, all coming up here on Nedbank Business Watch. Otherwise, it's 2 minutes after 2. Stay with us for a whole lot more on the show.
We kick off the program with some of our business stories.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Welcome back. This is Nedbank Business Watch. In our business stories this afternoon.
In our first story, the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade has announced plans to establish a cooperative bank within the next 3 years. This was revealed by the Honourable Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade, Manqoba Khumalo, during the German Cooperative and Raiffeisen Confederation. It is a conference that is on the development of a cooperative bank in Eswatini. It was held at the Mountain View in Babane.
The Honourable Minister says they want to learn more about the Cooperatives Bank and setting it up with the support from DGRV, as in Germany where they originate, cooperatives drive the economy. The minister says up to 50% of Germany's economy is being supported by cooperatives. He further emphasizes that it is a top priority for the ministry to establish the bank within the next 3 years.
Germany economy yabo lenkulu isetandleni tema cooperatives masifunza bathi up to 50% of the economy yaseGermany idrive ngama cooperatives. Sitofunza ke lokuthi benda njani bona bese sithatha ke loyo mqondo loyo ngoba nala ekhaya siyawabona ama cooperatives ayakhula. Sikhuluma nje na ama cooperatives sekaneti imali nama assets lengcako ku 3 billion lakangwane. Lokho ke kusho ukuthi vele indlela le fanele ukuthi siyithathe yekuthuthukisa eMaswati. Ama-cooperatives akathenga ama-property, ama-cooperatives athenga amabhizinisi, ama-cooperatives akhela abantu tindlu. Kuningi kakhulu lokwentwa ngama-cooperatives. Lesikujabulela kakhulu-ke ukuthi besibanikele laba bema-cooperatives ilitiko i-assignment kwekuthi sifuna uku-establisha libhange lema-cooperatives. Yinto nje very high priority ku-strategy sethu silitiko ukuthi eminyakeni lemithathu sifuna sibe sesinelibhange lema-cooperatives ngoba asifuni ukuthi le mali lapha ikhona igcine idlabhadisekile.
Chairperson of DGRV in Germany highlights some of the essential requirements needed to grow cooperatives in the country, which are critical to the sustainability of the cooperative bank.
We must try to get the youth into the cooperatives as members, and it's the same problem here in the kingdom, and so we can also use we can learn from each other. It's very important to listen to the members, because the members are the people who have engaged with the project, and
DGRV, which is consulting on the feasibility of the cooperative bank, has indicated that the 3-year timeline set by the ministry for establishing the bank is achievable. Reporting Nelson Langamandla, Patizwe Msibi, Mbabane.
In other news, a new era for young entrepreneurs has begun with the launch of the Youth Eswatini Digital Savings and Credit Cooperative, a trailblazing initiative supported by the German Cooperative and Raiffeisen Confederation and the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade. At a reception held at Raiffeisen House in Mbabane on Tuesday evening, the Honourable Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honourable Manqoba Khumalo, hailed the cooperative as a turning point for young people, declaring that it paves the way for cooperatives to embrace the digital age and position Eswatini at the forefront of innovation and inclusion.
Honourable Manqoba Khumalo stated that this marks a new dawn for cooperatives in the country as young people have taken the lead in establishing this groundbreaking digital cooperative. He further noted that as the ministry continues to advance the digital transformation of cooperatives, the registration and certification of this new entity represent a significant step forward towards the digitization of Eswatini's cooperative movement.
Cooperative lena le digital isebenzisa tebuchwepheshe ukuze ukuthi ilethe ama-solutions kubantu labasha njengoba sathi nje ukuthi the jobs of the future are digital. So the cooperative lena ke isebente nawo lamajalimane babasita kuze ukuthi basethape lamhla ke sebabhalisile ngalokusemthethweni sebayi-cooperative leseyisemthethweni.
Silindile Mkhondo, founding member of the Youth Eswatini Digital Circle, shares what this milestone means for young people and how it will open new opportunities for digital financial empowerment.
Having this certificate for Eswatini Youth Eswatini Digital Circle as the greatest achievement ever for us as youth as Eswatini, because it is an opportunity for the youth in the country to actually come and join the circle, which is meant to cultivate the savings culture amongst the nation. So the fact that now we are officially registered, it means that our door is open for any young person who might be interested in saving. It's either you serve for tertiary cost, or you serve for because you want to start up a business, or maybe you serve just because you want to improve the standard of living in your family or for yourself. So sivule tandla singu yes sithi bamfla basha abete noma entrepreneur noma u student noma uyasebenta noma awusebenzi ema savings ethu acala ku 50 emalangeni lokusho ukuthi nga 50 rand wakho per month kukhona longa achieve at the end of the year, kukhona a business longa icala at the end of the year. So actually what we are saying kula bamfla basha ukuthi let's look into the future together. Let's try to cultivate the savings culture amongst ourselves.
The chairperson of DGRV in Germany highlights the role they have played in supporting cooperatives in the country and outlines future plans to strengthen the cooperative movement through partnership with the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade.
First of all, the foundation of the National Cooperative Federation of Eswatini, a milestone in sectoral coordination and representation. And second, the implementation of digital solutions, and including a world-class core banking software that empowers cooperatives to operate securely and efficiently. Looking ahead, there are still a lot of joint plans, among them to establish a cooperative bank in Eswatini, a bold and transformative step toward financial sovereignty and inclusive growth.
DGRV is also working closely with the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade to establish a national cooperative bank that will serve the more than 1,500 cooperatives operating across the country. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa Mbabane.
And you're up to date with some of the latest in business this afternoon.
Yeah, after the break, we hear from Managing Director of Nedbank, Eswatini, Fikile Ngosi, and Victor Langa, the General Manager, Asset Management Unit from the African Alliance, as we dial in on the exclusive wine tasting and cigar event that was hosted by Nedbank in partnership with African Alliance this past weekend. So stay tuned.
Welcome back. You are still watching Nedbank Business Watch. Onto this now. An evening of elegance, culture and refined celebration was the mood this past Saturday as Nedbank Eswatini, in partnership with the African Alliance, hosted the inaugural edition of the Vintage Note at the Terrace Royal Swaziland. The exclusive gathering brought together industry leaders, high-level executives and distinguished guests for a premium experience of fine wine, cigars, gourmet dining and live jazz, setting a new benchmark for luxury social events in the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Guests enjoyed 11 curated wine tastings from leading estates, paired with premium cigars and selected whiskies, all to the soulful sounds of Zwile the saxophone. The event drew prominent figures including Finance Minister Neil Reichenberg, senior public sector leaders, and top corporate executives celebrating excellence, lifestyle, and ambition under the Eswatini skyline. A standout highlight of the evening was the live wine auction, where rare bottles drew enthusiastic bids, adding an energetic and exclusive edge to the night. Nedbank Eswatini Managing Director Fikile Ngosi officially welcomed guests to the inaugural Vintage Note, highlighting the bank's commitment to curating premium experiences that bring together leaders shaping Eswatini's economic and social landscape. She emphasized that this gathering was not only about fine wine and elevated lifestyle, but about meaningful connection, shared ambition, and celebrating progress as a nation.
We believe that it is a strategic intent that we ensure that whatever we offer our clients is actually more than just the products at table that we get in our point of presence. But it is also an opportunity for you to network with people from all over Eswatini. A lot of you just met by emails, by phones, but we thought that let's get something that will make them relax and talk is born.
Well, the Vintage Note has already positioned itself as a signature annual platform for networking, culture, and premium experience in the kingdom, courtesy of Nedbank, Eswatini, and African Alliance.
As we dine with Nedbank, balancing digital innovation with humanity in the workplace. That was the key message delivered by Dr. Terence Sibia, Group Managing Executive for Nedbank Africa Region at the Institute of People Management, Eswatini Annual Convention for 2025, held in Eswatini. The two-day gathering brought together human resource leaders, executives, and corporate decision makers to explore how technology is reshaping the world of work under the theme, "The future of HR is now. Power up, inspire change, and lead forward."
We're living in an age of change, and even now, we all in this room believe that we're going through profound change. But there's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that today, that reality of rapid change is unmistakable as driven by technology, especially artificial intelligence. This animal is reshaping how we work and how we redefine the role of people in organizations. Technology, as I see it, is actually rewriting the rules of productivity. It's transforming the skills that you need, and it's raising fundamental questions about human identity in the workplace. So conventions like this, Madam Azir, and the decisions that we take on this day, and through conventions like this, will undoubtedly shape how the next generation experiences work, purpose, and dignity. We're all leaders in this room, and we're all leaders in the people management space in one way or another. And we face a critical question at the heart of this profound transformation. And that question is, how do we embrace digital innovation and progress without losing the humanity of work? How do we embrace digital innovation and progress without losing the humanity of work? In other words, how do we use technology to serve our people rather than expecting our people to serve technology? I'll leave you with those questions for now. So let me draw some examples from the organization that I serve, which is Nedbank, and I've done so for the past 15 years. In trying to answer these profound questions, we chose very carefully a path that's actually grounded in purpose. Technology will definitely power our progress. But ladies and gentlemen, it is people that give us purpose. Our employee experience is built on this truth. Our people are just not part of the journey. The people are the journey. Human potential in my world and in the organization that I lead, or the banks that I run across the continent for the group, human potential is not just a line item in some income statement or balance sheet. In my view, it is the foundation of everything that creates value in our business. We ultimately then developed around that purpose to use our financial expertise to do good. And this is more than just a statement, because it actually guides how we serve clients, how we support communities, and invest in our people. And in this world, this day and age, in this world now that's driven by digitization, efficiency, and lots of automation, purpose actually ensures that progress remains human-centered and meaningful. It becomes the anchor that keeps us grounded in society's needs, because we cannot detach ourselves as a bank from people's needs. So purpose keeps us grounded in society's needs, especially as the world around us accelerates. In a sense, this is what we call at Nedbank, the Nedbank way, and we're unashamed about that. We strive to create a culture that's rooted in shared values, lived experiences, daily behaviors that shape how we collaborate, how we lead with empathy, and how we challenge one another to grow. Culture, and I hope this is the same for you, should not be what we say. It should be what we choose to do every day. It must show up in how we listen, how we respect each other, and how we respond when people need us the most. That is what builds trust. And without trust, I can say this without fear or favor, without trust, there are no resilient organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, as digital transformation accelerates, our responsibility to our people becomes even more critical. Because while AI may change how talent is sourced, we know that, how talent is hired, and how talent is developed, it can never replace human capability. AI, in my experience with it, cannot feel what a client is feeling. It can't demonstrate courage when a team is under pressure. It can't imagine a new possibility that brings along other people with belief and, more importantly, conviction. It can't do that. In essence, it cannot replace the power of human connection. Bundu. So we can fear AI, and we hear some fear-mongering that AI is going to take jobs, it's going to completely obliterate employees left, right, and center. This is why we should actually choose to see AI as an enabler. Actually, in many applications that we're seeing now, even within the bank, we see that as a partner. We see it as a partner that actually frees some of our people from doing repetitive work so that they can focus on what the human nature comes with, which is creativity, problem solving, empathy, and indeed innovation. And these are uniquely human skills that can actually fuel authentic leadership and contribute to high performance. So AI should be the clearer, perhaps, of the path so people can contribute more meaningfully, collaborate more effectively, and spend more time on the work that matters. So in our experience and my experience, to humanize this future, as the topic suggests, what we've sought to do is to actually simplify and design an employee experience that has a few key priorities. To highlight a few: one, to strengthen performance and dignity, well-being, and belonging. Two, to focus on the development of future skills, because we know we're going to need specific skills, so it can help that if we can develop those future skills. And also to allow the necessary flexibility that protects the human connection. But as I've mentioned earlier, we're all leaders in one way or another in this room, and therefore we have a responsibility and roles to play in humanizing the future. And it is my contention, ladies and gentlemen, that leaders who listen, who include others, and who take accountability for culture and behavior are the ones most likely to be successful. And I strongly believe that these are the conditions that allow our employees and our human capital to thrive. In fact, put simply, these are the conditions that make work worth doing. So my responsibility and commitment as a leader, for instance, is to ensure that technology enhances the human experience. It must enhance the human experience and not erase it. And we speak a lot about data these days. The data must be personalized to drive growth, remove bias, and build trust so that every colleague feels seen, supported, and therefore able to thrive. So most of us are representing companies or in one way or another representing other people this evening, and we're all investing in the future of work. That's why we're here. We're investing time today in thinking about the future or the now of work. And from our perspective at Nedbank, for instance, in 2024, we invested more than 130 million that was just allocated to learning and development, which for us represented a deep belief in the agency ambition of our colleagues. That would have been spread around bursaries, graduate programs, and creating professional pathways across finance, technology, engineering, and also sustainability. Meaning we're trying to prepare our people for a future where technical fluency and emotional intelligence matter equally. We need to create a future where technical fluency must get comfortable with these technological tools, but at the same time, emotional intelligence must be treated on an equal footing. And our ambition also extends beyond our borders. As you all know, I have the privilege and honor of running Nedbank Africa Regions, which is in countries outside of South Africa, including Eswatini. And we all know that our beautiful continent is a young continent. We can quote the statistics, Dr. Mulela. 1.5 billion is the population of Africa, of which I think the median age is 25, something like that. So it's a very young continent. And we can quote those statistics, but from my perspective, I actually choose to see that as a source of global competitive advantage. But only if we can all create pathways from talent, not just spotting talent, but creating opportunity. The young population can be a competitive advantage if we can figure out ways to create meaningful pathways for young people from talent to opportunity. And we all know the future of Africa. It's not abstract. The future of the African economy is not abstract at all. And in so doing, creating these pathways, we can create graduate cohorts, youth development pipelines, and leadership accelerators. As we were discussing at my table earlier with the good doctor, the success of young people is a direct driver of the success of any organization. This is true across the beautiful continent of ours, as I've seen, including right here in Eswatini, where young people represent a powerful force. They also represent a powerful force for progress and resilience, and we should never ignore that. So through our strategy, for instance, across the bank, we're busy accelerating and expanding access to leadership development, digital learning, and giving meaningful work so that young professionals across the continent can lead with confidence in the world they are inheriting, but by so doing, also shaping. And this is where, I dare say, this is where convergence, the convergence of purpose and performance becomes undeniable. When young people thrive, economies thrive. When economies thrive, clients thrive. And when our clients thrive, so does the business and all the communities that we serve. So our commitment, which I think should be all our commitment, to building youth capability should be evident in all our pathways that we create in the workplace. In our instance, thousands of young people have been introduced to employment opportunities through the programs at Nedbank in the past 5 years, many of them moving into permanent roles and others moving on to other aspects of the economy. And we've never seen this as a charity, but as a massive investment in creating a workforce of the future. Because every young person who steps into their potential creates a ripple effect, and we've seen this, creates a ripple effect of possibility in their own households and communities. And this, for us, is what it means to do good with expertise. Another key aspect or component of humanizing the future of work is inclusion. Inclusion must also be experienced every day for it to mean anything at all. A human workplace is one where every colleague, regardless of their background, ability, or circumstances, can contribute equally and with dignity and pride. True inclusion, in my perspective, means removing barriers, adapting our systems, and never losing sight of the individual behind the job title. And this is where leadership choices matter. This is where culture choices matter. The way we listen and redesign our work matters even more. We must build organizations where people do not need to earn the right to belong. They must belong because they are there already. And that, to me, there's no more powerful foundation for performance than any, that's far more powerful than any technology could ever create. So you will find in the future of work that we will ask more of our leaders, because the future we want requires leadership that is visible, empathetic, curious, but perhaps, most importantly, accountable. There's no doubt technology will change the nature of many jobs. There's no doubt about that. We must accept that. Strategies will change direction, for sure, but it's leaders who can change how people feel. It's leaders who either unblock courage or create fear. The greatest competitive advantage of any organization in the future will be one that has a workforce that believes in its own relevance and believes that its leaders believe in them. That belief is what enables reinvention and retention. That belief is what creates resilience that lasts. So as we sit here, we should all be reimagining the workplace as a platform for personal growth and well-being. Because the pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, if anything, the pandemic taught us that resilience is strengthened by trust, empathy, and adaptability. Those lessons remain embedded in how we design workspaces, set boundaries, and also pay attention to something that's often overlooked, and that's the mental well-being and mental health of our employees.
And we've just heard there from Group Managing Executive for Nedbank Africa, Dr. Terence CB, on humanizing the future of work. And he was speaking at the IPM convention for 2025 held just this past week. This is Nedbank Business Watch. The show continues after this.
Welcome back. You're still watching Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you so much for staying with us. Eswatini recently played host to senior policymakers, economic experts and development leaders at the ad hoc expert group meeting and the 31st Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Officials and Experts for Southern Africa. At the heart of these discussions was a central question. And the question is, how does Southern Africa unlock industrial growth? How does it deepen regional integration and fully harness the promise of the African Continental Free Trade Area? To help us unpack the outcomes as well as the road ahead, we are joined by Eunice G. Kwamendo, the Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa. She's a key voice in shaping policy that guides industrialization as well as economic transformation across the region. Kamendo, welcome to Nedbank Business Watch. A very good afternoon to you. How are you?
Thank you, and good afternoon. I am well, thank you.
All right, fantastic. Perhaps let's start with the key outcomes, right? And I want to understand this from your vantage point. What were the most significant insights as well as the outcomes that emerged from the ad hoc expert group meeting as well as the 31st Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Officials and Experts that was held here in Eswatini?
Indeed. No, thank you very much again, Sophie. So just to perhaps start by introducing what those two meetings are, I think it's important for the viewers to know this. They're actually our statutory meetings that we hold every year. And basically what we do is convene member states within the sub-region. We present our program of work, what we've done for that year, but most importantly, what we intend to do the next year. And typically, this conversation is really built around what are the key pressing issues that the region is facing, that the region should focus on with our support. Again, to give it context, last year we had the same conversation in Zambia, which was hosted in Zambia. And the topic of discussion was to deal with the energy deficits that we're having in the region. You might remember this, a lot of the rolling blackouts in South Africa, for example, 21-hour blackouts in Zambia where we're hosted, and similar stories from other countries within the region. And that was pressing because indeed, if you're talking about industrialization, you cannot talk about industrialization without energy because it is a key enabler. So you would see that what we typically do is really center the conversation on the key critical issues within the sub-region. And happy to report, therefore, that we're seeing a lot of advances within the region in terms of investments in energy diversification and so on. This year's conversation was around AFCFTA. Again, was also very deliberate because if you recall that we started the year with the US, for example, imposing tariffs worldwide on a number of countries, and including Southern Africa, and that has had a huge negative impacts on economies of the sub-region. And the reason that why we're having this conversation was, one, to literally deal with that critical issue head on and make sure that Southern African countries are more resilient, are building economic resilience in this sense. So if I drill it down back to a few takeaways from that conversation was, one, the realization or recommitment by member states noting that AFCFTA will be or is a game changer for the sub-region, remains a game changer if you look at, and we talk about this a lot, the 1.4 billion market that we have at our disposal. The second takeaway was around, fine, we do have AFCFTA as a game changer, but do we have the products that we can trade amongst ourselves? And the reality is that not really, because if you look at the economies of Southern African region, it's really commodity-based, focused on a few products, maybe mineral for some and a few others for others, but not wide enough to be able to trade on the AFCFTA market. So therefore, the second takeaway was, let us build regional value chains so that we can take advantage of the AFCFTA and ensure that our economies are therefore resilient. And thirdly, and I'll stop here, was also the fact that, yes, we can build products, we can trade, but one of the Achilles heel that we have in international trade is that there are also a lot of non-tariff barriers that countries actually impose on each other. And therefore, this was a very good platform to have that conversation, to remove those non-tariff barriers for us to be able to take advantage of the AFCFTA. So three key takeaways from where I stand.
And you do mention something quite critical there, the 1.5 billion market within the AFCFTA that we do want to leverage. It is in our disposal anyway. But you know, the conversation around value chains is also quite critical. And one wants to understand practical steps, that Southern Africa can really take to build and benefit more effectively from those value chains, as a pathway to stronger industrial development? How can we really do that in terms of, building and benefiting more into those value chains?
Indeed. So one of the functions that we have as ECA is we generate knowledge. So we're a think tank as an organization, but we also convene. So part of the meeting that we had was the second function that we have in terms of convening, and the third one is around providing technical assistance. Now, value chains, I think a good starting point, and perhaps here, let me come with one of the challenging issues that the Minister of Finance of Eswatini actually raised to me 2 years ago when I had come. We had come to launch the Eswatini's national AFCFTA implementation strategy. And he said to me, as a Minister of Finance, I'm looking at the import bill, and we import almost everything. It means that we're not producing much. Can you help us identify some of the critical areas that we can actually begin to develop in terms of value addition or developing a regional value chain? Which I think is very, very critical. And a lot of the countries, Eswatini is not alone in that dilemma, because if you look across the sub-region, a lot of countries are in the same spot. So for us, what we have done in terms of ECA Southern Africa is really to ensure that we are putting front and center the issue of developing regional value chains. And I'll mention, there are a few that we're doing within the region, but I want to mention one because that one will link not just one country, but several other countries within the sub-region. Now, if you look at the beef sector, for example, we do have Botswana, which exports beef to Europe, for example. And for them, their concentration is a lot more just on the beef, not so much on beef products. So when we started this conversation again 2 years ago with the Botswana government, one, we want, of course, for them to expand beyond what they're producing in terms of beef, but we also wanted to use or leverage their position that they already captured the market to see what else they could produce. So leather products, for example, is one. And once you bring in that as a value chain to say leather products, then automatically you bring in other countries like South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini, Zambia, Zimbabwe, where they actually have huge numbers of livestock. So the leather value chain is actually quite wide, where they can, industries can actually begin in terms of whether it's making shoes, making bags, belts. But I think for me also more critically, the leather industry is actually one which is key, because if you look at South Africa, they already have a very well-developed automotive industry. And they actually need leather for the car seats. You can already see you're moving up the value chain. So for us, I think that's a practical example on how we can build industries. And I can speak on a few others that are in the similar category. But the idea is that we're able to pull in the regional assets into what should be both at the national level, but also at a regional level, that we can build industries, but also make sure that we are manufacturing, but at the same time ensuring that we are achieving economic diversification.
And, the private sector, I do want to understand, how does the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa see the private sector shaping and accelerating the continent's industrial drive?
So the private sector, and I think this, the jury has already been out on this one. I think we all know this. We talk about it and we sing about it to say the private sector is the one that would drive growth, would drive industrialization, would drive economic diversification. And there are a lot of examples from a lot of the developed, but also emerging countries that have actually used the private sector a lot more to drive their industrialization. So I think on that issue is settled. How do we support? So for us, because recognizing that, we ensure that we support private sector to thrive and develop. As you recall in my introduction, when I said some of the key functions that we work on, but just to come back and say also for ECA, we work a lot at the policy level. And it is important to work at the policy level to ensure that private sector is supported, because that is also, if governments do not create the enabling environment in terms of policies or supportive infrastructure, as well as some of the incentives, then private sector wouldn't be able to thrive. So first of all, as ECA, we work at a policy level, ensuring that countries are looking at their policy environments that will enable private sector to thrive. But we also, beyond working at the policy level, which, yes, is important, we've increasingly also begun to work directly with the private sector, because I think there's a lot in terms of, and we're doing this not only ourselves, but with also other collaborating partners. An example would be the United Nations Development Programme, the UN UNCTAD, for example, and other UN agencies, as well as other private sector. So what we're doing is basically working directly with private sector. Of course, private sector, there are different levels. There are some that are ready to fly. There are some that are just beginning to develop their products. So working with private sector, especially small and medium type of enterprises, supporting them in developing their products, supporting them in ensuring that whatever product that they're developing meets the standards that can be traded across borders, supporting them into branding, as well as finding the markets, is an area that we've started working very closely around. And you can see from that perspective that we actually also, from our perspective, working across the entire value chain policy, but also directly with private sector to ensure that they can actually grow, thrive, and trade under AfCFTA or other free trade agreements that we already have, like SADC and COMESA.
Yeah, and in what ways do you support the countries in addressing non-tariff barriers, but also improving customs and trade facilitation and aligning, the regulatory frameworks that are there to fully unlock the benefits of the African continental free trade area?
So for us as ECA, we work, like I said, at continental, regional, but also country level. But what we do best, which we felt it's working really well, is to work very closely with regional economic communities. I mentioned before the SADC Secretariat as one, the COMESA Secretariat as another. I think leveraging those platforms, first of all, is important because a lot of these issues are regional based, although there can be disputes at a bilateral level between countries. I think we always have to bring the conversation back to the regional economic communities as one. Secondly, I think one of our key areas of work is also to advocate for certain issues. And the more we talk about critical issues within the sub-region, but also at continental level, we've also seen how that has helped a lot. But thirdly, if I bring it back to the conversation that we had in Eswatini last week, we were able to see countries, for example, member states that were represented there. An example was Eswatini raising a challenge that they have as a non-tariff barrier that they have with Zimbabwe. They've imposed a non-tariff barrier for them. And I guess for Zimbabwe, it's a protectionist angle. So we started the conversation, but at the same time, we will take it up to the appropriate channels in terms of the SADC Secretariat as well as COMESA to ensure that we help these two countries resolve some of the challenges that they're having. And there's so many other examples that are alike that countries also came forward to say they're having a challenge with either Botswana or another because they're, bringing all these non-tariff barriers, which is actually going against the free trade agreements that, exist within the sub-region. So again, working closely with those regional economic communities helps a lot. Advocating, but also providing the platform that countries can actually come and, for a lack of a better word, expose some of the malpractices that are happening between countries. I think it's a useful way also to deal with these issues.
Eunice, thank you so much for your insights and for joining us here on Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you.
Thank you very
Conversation with Eunice G. Kamwendo, the Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, which is walking us through the outcomes from the meetings here in Eswatini, as well as the broader economic mission to build a resilient, integrated, industrial and competitive Africa. Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Nedbank Business Watch. The show continues after the break.
Welcome back now for the final segment of the show, which is the market analysis. Toba Kameze, who is the Treasury Sales Manager at Nedbank, joins me in studio. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, and good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Glad to have you with us. So, as of today, Wednesday, how is the rand performing, and also how can you link it to what we've seen with regards to gold?
So we've seen the rand gain a bit of strength from the levels that we saw yesterday. It has gained about 0.4% from the levels that we saw yesterday, and that is linking it to gold. The rand is a commodity-linked currency, South Africa being an exporter of a number of commodities. So when the price of certain commodities goes up, it then also influences the price of or the strength of the rand. So we are seeing gold gaining also as well a bit of its losses from yesterday. So that has also helped stabilize or give gold a bit of fighting chance.
Right. Perhaps we can take a look at equities. You know, I would like to ask how perhaps Wall Street futures are reacting to persistent valuation concerns and also the awaited economic data for signs on the health of the labor market in the U.S.
Yeah, so there is concern. The mood in terms of risk in the market right now is sort of in a risk-off mood because of, as you've rightfully said, the concerns on valuation of equities. We're seeing a knock of about 1.17 on the price of the S&P 500 on the screen right now, and that is due to concerns on the sky-high valuation of tech stocks that we've continued to see. There's concerns of sustainability. There's concerns, of saying, is AI just a boom, or is it something that is going to be sustainable? And with that, we've seen the rapid increase in tech stocks, and then there's concerns in terms of if they are correctly evaluated and what will happen if then there's a correction on those prices.
Given this sharp sell-off or global tech stocks that we're seeing, amid growing concerns of an AI investment bubble, how significant is it when it comes to, these developments, signaling rather that markets have overpriced the growth of, or the expectations with regards to growth in terms of AI?
So it is significant because these are giant tech companies with huge balance sheets, and the investors have put in a lot of money into them. So there is that risk of mood in the market to say, is it a boom, or is it something that's going to be sustainable? So I think it's just a wait-and-see game in that regard. But there's definitely concerns from investors. We saw the also CEOs of Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs pointing out to those sky-high valuations and raising concerns as well. So those are sort of key individuals that are speaking about this, and markets are sort of then getting jittery when such comments are being made.
Yes. And then we move on to commodities. What are we looking at today? I do recall that this week OPEC Plus kind of halted our productions, but any changes today? Any ripple effects there?
Okay, so on oil, well, oil is sort of steady.
Yeah.
There is sort of a push and pull when it comes to the drivers of the price of oil right now. OPEC Plus have said that they will not be implementing their output increase in that was scheduled for early next year.
Yes.
So that has sort of then boosted the price of oil, but at the same time, we are seeing sort of stockpiles in the US. We're seeing a bit of lack, or if I can say it, lack of demand or projection of reduced demand in some economies. So that is sort of then balanced out the effect of that on the price of oil, if I can put it like that. But yeah, it's sort of steady, 0.15% decline. Gold, on the other hand, has gained significantly, 0.78%. We saw gold losing about 1% yesterday. Due to there is sentiment in the market as investors move away from your risky assets, the stocks that we've just spoken about, they then tend to look for safer options.
Right.
So gold then is benefiting from that, and we are just watching to see if that continues.
Right. Let's move the conversation closer to home in terms of currencies. In neighboring South Africa, the PMI data came out from 50.2% in September to a decline. What's your sentiment or reading or observation actually of the data that came out?
Yeah, so the data that came out sort of didn't really move the needle much in terms of the currencies. I think the rand is just taking cues from global drivers as well as the price of commodities. But those numbers basically showed that the South African economy shrinked from a private sector perspective from 50.02 in September to 48.8, as you've said, in October, which is the first in 5 months. I think for the last five consecutive months, we've been reporting a PMI number that is, increasing. But we've then are seeing this contraction now in October. Albeit it's a small one, but yeah, it is. Markets are watching that. But in terms of the currency per se, it didn't really move it that much. It's taking cues from global sentiments.
Right. Positive investor sentiment or private sector growth in South Africa. Let's take a look at the rand. How is it looking versus some of the world's strongest currencies?
Yeah, so it's against the pound. It sort of gained a bit as well, 0.616%, and then slightly dropped against the euro, 0.09, but I would say that is quite a flat movement. So the rand overall, we are in an upward environment, looking at where we're coming from in previous weeks. But we are seeing a bit of strength from yesterday. So basing it off of what we saw yesterday, it is improving. But when you look at, you just extend your view to the past few weeks, we are seeing an uptick a decline rather, in the value of the rand.
Right. Toba, thank you very much for your insights. We've run out of time. That was Toba Gamete, Treasury Sales Manager at Nedbank, sharing insights on what is shaping the day's trade. This has been Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, bye-bye.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.